Listen to the sound of a heavy metal credit card dropping on a polished marble counter. It's an engineered thud. It sounds like success, but if you listen closely, behind the clinking of $20 cocktail glasses, it sounds exactly like a steel trap snapping shut. You saw this guy today. He drove past you in a matte black imported SUV that smells like premium leather and desperate decisions. He's wearing a watch that costs more than his annual savings, and his jacket is screaming the names of Italian designers who wouldn't let him pass their velvet ropes without his high-interest plastic. We call this the premium broke. It is an epidemic of visual hysteria, where grown adults burn their finite daily sweat to simulate a fictional lifestyle, terrified of looking average to people they secretly despise. They are convinced that net worth must be validated by the envious stares of strangers at a morning traffic light. Here is a decree you must burn into your mind. Society's modern definition of success is not a milestone. It is a psychological disease designed to keep you exhausted and obedient. True abundance is invisible. It is aggressively boring. It is cold, calculating, and operates in the shadows of the economic machine, entirely isolated from the sickening need for social approval. We are programmed by algorithms to associate financial victory with loud logos and digital updates. But while the middle class exhausts its mental energy running on a treadmill of status, there is a different breed of player moving silently across the board. Picture the guy standing behind our premium broke executive in the grocery store line. He is wearing a blank, unbranded gray hoodie. He drove a 10-year-old pickup truck with a noticeable scratch on the door. He brews black coffee in his kitchen at dawn. He could buy the entire city block in cash before breakfast. But he consciously chooses the unshakable peace of not needing to prove his existence to anyone. What does that guy know about capital? What is the secret he figured out while the rest of the world was chasing the bait and ignoring the cage? The system desperately needs you to care about the logo. The financial machine relies on your deep-seated insecurity to generate its quarterly profits. You buy the expensive shoes to feel like you belong in the pack, and that exact purchase ensures you never possess the leverage to leave the maze. There are 7 behavioral indicators that separate the stealthily wealthy from the aggressively broke. The first 2 hide in plain sight: an absolute visceral repulsion to branded clothing, and a strict refusal to tie their identity to metal boxes that plummet in value the second the tires hit the asphalt. But the illusion runs much deeper than the fabric on your back. The real danger isn't the visible spending. The real danger is the psychological decay that happens when you trade your actual freedom for a temporary, fragile illusion of power. The psychological decay begins the moment you realize your entire identity is financed. Look at the modern, high-income earner. Let's call him Ethan. He pulls in $120,000 a year in corporate tech sales. By society's metrics, he won the game. He rents a glass-walled apartment downtown, wears a smartwatch that tracks his chronic stress, and drinks $12 cold brews. But Ethan is trapped in a sophisticated cycle of behavioral manipulation. He is exhausted. He works 60 hours a week dealing with clients he despises. And when Friday night hits, his depleted brain demands compensation. He buys a $400 pair of designer sneakers. He doesn't need them. He buys them because he is self-medicating his burnout with retail therapy. The credit card companies don't just build a cage of compounding interest. They actively convince the lab rats to proudly paint the bars with premium lifestyle brands. Here is a brutal law of human nature. A man who builds his net worth in silence becomes entirely immune to the applause of fools. The modern tragedy is bleeding your finite energy dry just to secure a digital nod of approval from acquaintances who wouldn't lend you $10 if your life depended on it. The authentically rich understand this. They view the pursuit of status not just as foolish, but as a severe financial vulnerability. They have engineered their lives to operate outside the validation matrix. And it starts with a complete rejection of visual noise. Rule 1. The Logo Repulsion Protocol. The genuinely wealthy view heavily branded clothing as a tax on the insecure. When you walk around with a massive Italian designer name plastered across your chest, you aren't flexing. You are volunteering as an unpaid billboard for a corporation that secretly mocks your need for their validation. The quiet millionaire wears blank, high-quality fabrics. They buy the unmarked black t-shirt. They do not need their jacket to announce their bank balance because their bank balance is quietly generating dividends while they sleep. They have insulated their ego from their wardrobe. But this visual boycott is just the outer shell. The real detachment happens in their social strategy. The stealth wealthy actively cultivate a reality where no one pays attention to them. They embrace the profound power of being completely overlooked. Rule 2. The social irrelevance privilege. You are terrified of falling behind the cultural curve. You upgrade the perfectly functional titanium smartphone every 12 months because you dread the microscopic social friction of having green text bubbles or an outdated camera lens. The stealth wealth practitioner finds this hilarious. They possess the ultimate luxury, the privilege of total social irrelevance. They are purposefully out of touch with hyper-consumer trends. They drive the dented 10-year-old vehicle and let their co-workers assume they are struggling. They sit at the family barbecue and politely listen to their broke cousin brag about a leased sports car, smiling quietly, never correcting them, never revealing the 7-figure brokerage account sitting in their pocket. This intentional isolation is a shield. It keeps the predators, the opportunistic relatives, and the parasitic lifestyle creep at bay. They have replaced the desperate vocabulary of credit approval with the cold, calculated language of time accumulation. They aren't trying to look rich. They are executing a meticulously planned escape from the very system that everyone else is currently bleeding to death in. Let's do the math the bank hides in the fine print. You look at the guy in the imported SUV and assume he has money. You are confusing cash flow with leverage. You are looking at a man who is actively renting his lifestyle from a financial institution at an 18% interest rate. If Ethan, our corporate tech guy from earlier, loses his job on a Tuesday, by Thursday he is in a cold sweat trying to figure out how to liquidate his overpriced watch just to cover his inflated rent. The modern economy operates on a predatory algorithm. It is designed to extract maximum interest from the maximum number of people terrified of looking average. Here is a decree you must burn into your mind. The greatest trick the corporate machine ever pulled was convincing the working class that an approved credit limit is the exact same thing as actual wealth. It is not. Credit is a beautifully braided leash, and the longer the leash, the harder the maze operator can yank you back to the treadmill when you try to step out of line. The stealthy wealthy understand the brutal mathematics of this trap. They know that financing a depreciating object to impress a coworker guarantees you will take orders from a boss until you are 70. They do not care about the visible. They are fixated on the numbers you cannot see. Rule 3. The invisible equity obsession. The fake rich buy things that rust, rot, go out of style, and require expensive maintenance. They buy shiny liabilities and desperately try to convince themselves it's an investment. The quietly wealthy buy pure equity. They buy ownership, They relentlessly accumulate shares of index funds and stakes in private businesses. You cannot wear an index fund to a cocktail party. You cannot rev the engine of a dividend portfolio at a red light. And that is exactly why the herd ignores it. The stealth wealth practitioner channels every spare dollar into invisible assets that silently multiply in the dark. They are content looking like a pedestrian while secretly owning the concrete you walk on. They measure success by the sheer volume of unrecoverable time they have bought back. And this invisible fortress of leverage creates a psychological byproduct that normal people cannot comprehend. Rule 4. The Emergency Apathy Response Watch. Exactly what happens when a sudden $5,000 expense drops out of the sky. The transmission blows. A medical deductible is required. For the premium broke, this is a catastrophic emotional event. It triggers severe panic attacks and a desperate scramble to shuffle balances between high-interest cards. They are living on a razor-thin margin, one minor inconvenience away from total bankruptcy. For the quietly wealthy, an unexpected $5,000 bill is a simple rounding error. It is met with absolute sociopathic coldness. They do not blink. They write the check from a liquid emergency fund, take another sip of their coffee, and go right back to reading. This apathy is not arrogance. It is the mathematical reward for keeping your overhead brutally low and your liquidity aggressively high. They don't need to paint the bars of their cage gold because they have secretly memorized the combination to the exit. The apathetic response to financial emergencies is just a symptom of a much larger architectural shift. When you stop bleeding your capital to maintain an artificial image, a terrifying and beautiful thing happens. You start accumulating options. The fifth and sixth indicators of the quietly wealthy blend seamlessly into their daily routine. They possess absolute time sovereignty, and they exhibit a total immunity to lifestyle inflation. When the stealth wealth practitioner gets a $50,000 bonus at the end of the year, their neighbors do not see a new imported vehicle in the driveway. Their coworkers do not see a new custom-tailored jacket or a vacation to a private resort. The money simply vanishes. It goes dark. It is immediately deployed into their invisible fortress of index funds and income-generating assets. They do not inflate their expenses to match their new income level because they understand a fundamental law of the system. Every time you upgrade your lifestyle, you are voluntarily adding a heavier lock to your own cage. You are taking the bait, swallowing the cheese, and letting the steel trap of the modern rat race snap directly over your neck. The premium broke individual cannot comprehend this level of restraint. To them, unspent money is wasted potential for social leverage. It burns a hole in their pocket. But the quiet millionaire knows that the ultimate flex isn't showing desperate strangers that you have capital. The ultimate flex is waking up on a random Tuesday morning, staring at the ceiling, and knowing with absolute mathematical certainty that you do not have to be anywhere, speak to anyone, or perform any task unless you consciously choose to do so. They are aggressively building the seventh and final indicator, the absolute apex of financial evolution. Rule 5, the ultimate ghost autonomy. This is the practical deployment of absolute optionality. It is a level of unencumbered liquidity that provides an impenetrable shield against the daily absurdities of the modern corporate machine. When you have 10 years of basic living expenses sitting quietly in a brokerage account, your manager's unreasonable demands stop sounding like a threat to your survival and start sounding like a mild suggestion. You no longer negotiate from a place of quiet desperation. You negotiate from a place of chilling indifference. If the company culture turns toxic, you resign. You hold the ultimate power of the ghost. You are no longer dependent on the maze for your survival. The grand exit from this economic slaughterhouse was never about becoming the fastest rat on the corporate wheel. It was never about upgrading your cage from rusted steel to polished gold. The exit is about becoming entirely invisible to the operators of the game. It is about reaching a psychological state where the social media algorithms can no longer trigger your deep-seated insecurities, and where the banks realize they can no longer extract a single dime of interest from your daily labor. Picture a quiet Wednesday afternoon. You are sitting at a small, unremarkable local diner. You are wearing a blank shirt and drinking a $2 black coffee. Outside the window, you watch a man in a leased luxury sedan screaming into his titanium smartphone, his neck veins bulging because his adjustable rate mortgage just reset. He is drowning in the illusion of success. You are completely at peace. You own a fractional share of the real estate he is parked on. You own the debt instruments that are slowly crushing him. And nobody in that diner has the slightest clue who you are. That is the true power of the ghost. That is the devastating silence of the authentically wealthy. If you survive this long, and you can finally see the invisible bars we just exposed, drop a comment saying, "invisible dividend." The rest of the comment section will think you are hallucinating. But the architects of the exit will know exactly what you are doing. So, I have one final question for you before you close the screen. Are you going to keep renting your identity from a predatory bank, or are you finally going to buy back your life?